Muito boa tarde a todos. Sejam todos bem-vindos ao Tabletop número 2, ao final desse primeiro dia do 44º Congresso da Propriedade Intelectual, promovido pela ABPI. Eu sou Roberto Ribeiro, sócio do escritório Daniel Advogados, e tenho a honra de receber aqui para esse painel sobre produtos biológicos na agricultura e seu papel no desenvolvimento nacional, desafios em PI, o Dr. Arthur Gomes. Dr. Arthur é formado em Direito pela Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie e especialista em Direito Ambiental pela PUC de São Paulo. Trabalhou em departamentos jurídicos de companhias como a BASF, JHSF e CHS, atuando com temas ambientais, regulatórios, financeiros, imobiliários e de propriedade intelectual. Atualmente, o Dr. Arthur ocupa a posição de diretor executivo e de sustentabilidade da CropLife Brasil. Também aqui a minha tenho o privilégio de contar com a presença da doutora Liane Lage. A doutora Liane Lage é graduada em Engenharia Química pela Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais, possui mestrado e doutorado em Ciências em Engenharia Química pelo Programa de Engenharia Química da Coordenação de Programas da COP e também especialização em Propriedade Industrial pelo Centro Federal de Educação Tecnológica, tendo participado de diversos cursos internacionais de propriedade industrial. Neste nosso painel, nós discutiremos, como o próprio título explica, os produtos biológicos e seu papel na agricultura. E eu começo aqui lançando um desafio, talvez um raciocínio heterodoxo, no sentido de que, ao contrário do que muitos defendem, de que a propriedade intelectual ela serve para incentivar a inovação, a propriedade intelectual pode, na verdade, servir para viabilizar a inovação. É um mecanismo sem o qual a inovação não se cria, a inovação não se transforma e a sociedade não se transforma. Então, nesse sentido, para desenvolver o tema, até porque, dando um spoiler aqui, os chineses já estão aí no mercado, os australianos estão chegando. Eu queria abrir, então, essa fala com a participação do Dr. Arthur. Dr. Arthur, por favor.
Obrigado, Roberto. Vocês estão me ouvindo bem? Pode? Sim. Eu queria agradecer o convite, mais uma vez falando aqui no Congresso da ABPI, então é um enorme prazer. Falando de agricultura, biológicos, que são temas que me interessam bastante. E vou explicar um pouquinho quem é a CropLife muito rápido, trazendo talvez uma desmistificação, né, de quem é a CropLife. Né? Então a gente tem hoje aí mais de 50 associados. É uma associação de direito privado, né, como associações aí de outros setores. Dentro da produção de insumos agrícolas hoje é uma das associações aí mais representativas a nível global.
Considering one of the representatives institutions, we have some players in South America, Asia, and other countries. Can you hear me?
Vou pedir a todos um instante aqui para a gente regularizar o serviço de som. Tá? Obrigado.
Just a moment, please.
Eu vou elevar o tom da voz aqui. Tá indo bem agora?
Is it okay now? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is it okay now?
Alô?
Hello?
Tá, então vamos lá.
Okay.
Então,
So, CropLife has more than 50 members. Is it working?
Tá baixo.
Is it low?
Vou falar mais alto, então, aqui a gente...
I will increase the volume. We have some companies as BASF, Bayer, Syngenta, but also we we have some startups and small companies that just left the corridors of innovation centers as PRONIP, one of our members. So I'd like to bring this first information and to say that it's not an association of small companies. We have big companies with participation in other countries. We have some very localized, have some companies that work with in sectors very consolidated as chemical sector and biological sector also. That is the product in which I'm talking today. So after this first picture of how we are, I would like to talk about the products. When we talk about biologicals, which we have a mythological idea of soil in some initiatives that we will find some solutions. Science is trying and error, but we should think about research. And I would like to bring a little bit about the class of products. We have the biofungicides. We used to say that the fungi, the good and the bad one, with a direct action among the fungi, and that it's bad for the plants. This is an important class of products that today are available and that we find in the nature. In this path through innovation, we should have a lot of effort in research in our life. We have a very interesting class of product as an alternative to the chemical control. The bioinsecticides, that is a very important use for the Brazilian agriculture. So, for example, some products regarding DDT, and it's a bacteria that is found in the soil, in the water, and some dead bugs that produce some toxic proteins in some insects that can be controlled with biological products. We have the bioinoculants, perhaps is one of the products that are more direct linked to the concept of biological, because we think about fertilization as an alternative of a chemical fertilizants. In fact, these projects are connected as a global climate agency. We should leave less residues with less impact. So the biological fertilization is in fact a solution that is very interesting from the environmental point of view and also from the productivity point of view. This brings a capacity to face the challenges in a better way and against the plague of our agriculture. And we have one of our members that has a strong acting in this business that is not so reflected in the laws. Inovala many times is in a speed greater of the speed of the legislature, and the biostimulants as a regulator of growing regarding nutrients, and the smaller, but together these technologies represent a lot at the end of the day. These are products with a strong dedication in our members. We see a niche of innovation. We have intervention. There are not products that come from the nature in a crude way. We are talking about innovation. I will not get into details, but we know that we have in our articles 10, 18, in our law, some restrictions if we can consider or not an invention, a creation, and what can be considered as a patent. And this finds parallel and sometimes not in some countries. This means some choices. Julio brought the importance to reflect about these restrictions. Obviously, we have a position to reflect and to see, to look to countries with less restrictions to increase the protection to the biological products. I would like to bring some data that perhaps you already know, but when we think, just 3 examples, we can bring other examples, but when we think about microorganisms, some plants extract some fragments of proteins in Mexico and Australia, China, and the countries from the European bloc, Japan and South Korea. In all these places, we have some less restrictive behaviors than we have in Brazil. So Australia, I think it's a good example when we talk about agribusiness. Australia has as the destination of its export the same countries that we have as a target, like China. Australia competes with Brazil in different items in the export basket. It's not by chance that Brazil and Australia many times they are considered strong competitors. Australia has a product today in agribusiness more or less $59 billion, and Brazil is it's very beyond that. But perhaps we should take a look in countries as Australia to think about how regulation can unblock innovation. The biological sector in Brazil, and I will bring for me one of the greatest reasons in my evaluation, the biological sector increased 60% while the world grew 20%. So Brazil has creation innovation very good in this. We have from 2 to 3 harvests in the same area. Our winters not killing the plagues. The biologicals are alternative for that. So we cannot think that we are going to control plagues only with chemicals or only technologies. We need different solutions. So I would like to end this speech with this invitation so that we can consider these countries. It's a reflection with the society. There are some restrictions that are not only in the reach of our institution. We should discuss this from the legislation point of view. But biological, we discuss, and we need a specific regulation. We are today, we take a look in biologicals in this law of biochemicals, but we need also a scenario of intellectual protection that can be adequate to our competitors. I would like to pass the floor to Roberto. Thank you.
Som? Sim. Diante disso, creio que seria interessante agora ouvir, Liane, do seu ponto de vista.
From your point of view, what is your vision regarding our regulation framework, and what are the improvements that we could have to become more competitive? Thank you, Roberto and ABPI, for the invitation. Thank you for having the opportunity to listen to our tour. I would like to say that Brazil is a country that is agro. And listening return of my voice. And there is no possibility to have a country. That's why I'm receiving the return of my voice. We don't have the possibility to have a country that is sustainable if we don't become green. When I was invited to this panel, I was looking for a different information. I left ANPI, but the ANPI didn't leave me. To understand a little bit how is the system in terms of patent in this bio area. So we have a lot of radars, and for a time, ANPI is positioning itself to become sustainable in terms of the agriculture sector and different radars. And I invite you to look for this information. The first information that I think is very interesting, we have a radar of sustainable agriculture, we have a radar of bio-assumptions, and we are talking about the inoculants, and we are talking about also fertilizer. When you take a look in the statistics in the patent requests in this area, considering all the types of fertilizers, for example, we can find in China, and that's why he mentioned China, and China is arriving. In fact, China is responsible for 80% of the patents requirements considering fertilizers. So when you disregard China and you verify the biologicals, from the 80%, 60% are patents related to products and biological processes in the agribusiness. And how Brazil is positioning itself in this situation. Removing China, because there is no statistics to be done with China, we found that Brazil appears in the ranking of requests in the agro area. But when we take a look, we see that Brazil has some residents depositing in this bio area, but the majority are companies that are global companies, the majority, and they are members of PropLine. Is this bad? No, this means that here these companies are working in the agribusiness sector and developing some research. But when we take a look on the country, we are different countries here in a single country. We have some biotic and abiotic issues that are very regional. And our main researchers, when we leave this area of global companies working in the research and agribusiness, we go to the universities, and Julio mentioned a little bit that, but we are always talking about that. Our research is inside the universities. And what we need to do to go beyond and to resolve this regional issue, we need to have the triple C eggs. The universities has great universities, and I think PropLife has some companies that work with Alzheimer. We have some university in Lavras. We have different universities that work in the agronomic research, but we don't have the end of the innovation cycle. So what is missing here? Because we need to have the country being agro, and our potential is to be agro, but also to be sustainable. We have researchers, but we need to close this cycle. And I asked the association, like PropLine, how it can act so that small producers can also work with technologies. We will not be always a country leader in agriculture if we do not consider technology. And we cannot count only on the companies, the global companies that are bigger companies, so that this technology can be considered in all the producers. This would be the democracy of technology and the insertion of technology. And then we we face this issue of intellectual property. First of all, the lack of knowledge in the area. There is no knowledge, and the agribusiness needs to take to the big associations this knowledge to the producer. It's important to incentivize the small producer and to take the knowledge of the intellectual property. And then we face the issue of what are we protecting? When we talk about processes, we are talking about bacteria, we are talking about some extracts of plants. And this side of the biostimulants that he mentioned, this stimulates us a lot, but we should consider that we need conditions to protect this, because although Roberto mentioned that the innovation, you mentioned that the intellectual property should be visible. This is a reality, because when you have an innovation that is impacting, there is a consumption on that, regardless the area, you should find alternatives. And the competition goes, look for alternatives. But there is an incentive to this innovation. In Brazil, if we want to improve, we should improve all this cycle. And no producer, neither the small producer, will invest in new technologies if he cannot protect and if he cannot ensure a return on this investment. And then we face, without mentioning the biodiversity, we will see the point of the Article 10 and 18. And when we had a research that was very interesting done by CEPAL that compare what is protected in the world and what is protected in Brazil. And we verified, well, and I'm always disregarding China in any type of comparison, because this is out from our universe of comparison. We should be prepared to receive it. What we see is that Brazil is one of the countries that are better receiving the technology. When you do not allow, when you isolate from nature something, and you have a synthetic from that was isolated from nature, you cannot protect because it's equivalent to a natural process. There is something that is in the nature. And let's move forward. So if you verify that Brazil, due to the Article 10, that is not considering invention, and the Article 18, the third, that only consider the microorganism when it's transgenic, and there is a definition also about that, that we do not protect the seeds, even that inside it there is a transgenic modification. Even having this, the seed, the cell is not protected, only the processes. So we, Brazil, the holders of the biggest biodiversity of the world, we have a lot of biodiversity. People are very proud about that, but we are not protecting what we have. Our processes are specific because we have regional conditions that are different. So it's important to have some changes in our law if we need to transform our environment, and we have an important potential in a competitive environment, and we need investment, and we need the small producers on board. Now, let's have this discussion that already started. I think that all of you are aware. We have a representative of ABPI and the National Strategy of Intellectual Property. In this discussion, this point of the Article 10 and 18 were taken, and unexpectedly, we have 50% of people and companies and representatives in GIP that are favorable to the modification of the Article 10 and 18, becoming bigger as the way that we need to be competitive, and also that some of them need to think that it should be more restrictive. So this is an environment that
se não levarmos essa discussão mais profundamente, trazendo de fato quais são os
bringing
impactos,
what are the
o país
impacts
está fadado
the country will
que ceder no mundo agro, porque não há
will
como
be
ir adiante
back in the
sem
agro
tecnologia.
business because there's no way to move forward without technology. I think it's more or less what I want to bring to the discussion.
Obrigado.
Thank you so much.
Desenvolvendo
And developing,
som. Estão me ouvindo?
can you hear me? Thank
Desenvolver
you.
pouquinho mais o debate.
And developing a little bit this debate,
Pouco a impressão, eu queria
I have the impression, Arthur and Liliane, I would like you to confirm my impression. We are here to talk in a pragmatic way about a choice, or we are the port of the world, the provider of the world in a primary way, or we become an exporter of this product, however, with some technology embarked, because for sure it's more advantage when we have the first situation. So I would like to listen Arthur and Liliane, their point of view, if we are really facing this challenge and what are the considerations that they have to overcome this goal.
Eu acho que a escolha de sermos país de produção agrícola já foi tomada.
I think the choice to be a country of agriculture production that there is no way back. And in a scenario that we have with the increasing population, with a lot of population displacement that are necessary, that are need, we have an offer of stable. It's necessary to have an offer of that is stable, to have the food achieving the ones that need most. And I think that the choice of Brazil is to use more or less technology. So let's inspire in Holland or in countries like Sri Lanka, that was an agriculture country, and then move it back in some of this. So I think we should get our inspiration in Holland, in US. Brazil is playing an important role in the agriculture and technological point of view. So I know that we have small companies that are linked to universities and research, the research happening there. So Simone can confirm that we have a lot of partnerships. In the Copit, for example, that is one of the biggest company of biologicals in the world, where we talk with Copert. Although the matrix is from Holland in Brazil, it's the main point that they have. Things are happening. In Prop Life, we see an awareness about the intellectual agenda, and this happened in other solid companies, of course, with more time in the market. But there are some companies that are producing these products, and we have a lot of concerns on that. Oh, I need protection, because so far, my investment was well planned and worked. But as of now, we need a new wave, a new step of innovation to work with synthetic biology and transgenia, and to bring technology inside the labs, and to think about a lot of different possibilities. We have some chemicals that are traps, pheromones, low generation of residue. It's a threat that can you can have an issue in the insect, and you can control the plague easily. It's something. It's almost a dream of the professional of the environment. But it's not fair to think how a startup will leave Viçosa and thinking about protection. So I have been visiting more and more the corridors of innovations. They are incredible, but always we have in the lab a researcher that will look at you and will say, please help me to register a product. Please help me to register in CEGEM. And then In 1 year, I know that this person will say, now, how should I proceed to ensure that I will receive for that? So we still don't have the answers. We still have a lot of doubts. I think that this is the moment to have this look. So I think this is the choice to work with high technology in a high intensity. And many times we don't have the data. What is the data of non-investment? Sometimes we cannot see. We should get inspiration in those that work it. Yes, you remember very well Embrapa, and I would like Brazil to have 1,000 Embrapas because I think that Embrapa is excellence in research and really is in a competitive world that is protecting and charge royalties for its protection. And there's nothing wrong on that. So it's important to have a lot of Embrapas in Brazil, and we have in some regions, but it's important to have more and more. But returning to ABPI, we have another study in the economy area from Econ that was very interesting. This showed that the GDP from agro is linked with the price of the fertilizers and the inputs. So to leave an NPK world and to go to a bio world, you reduce the prices. And by reducing the prices, you increase the GDP. And by increasing the GDP, you can improve the social development of the country. So everything is linked. We need research, but we need to transform this research into innovation. So it's important to have this link of the companies with the researchers, as you were mentioning, Arthur, and this should be a very guided work so that we can understand where we are. I think that there should be some representatives from companies here, but that's it. China is there. And China is coming with technology. 30 years ago, I was in a fair and the products from China were not relevant. And today there is technology and the industrial policy is fantastic because everyone deposit, everyone learn how to do the process to protect. And then when you get innovation, you are protected. So there is a stimulus for small producers so that all of them can understand about intellectual property. Brazil needs that. We need to decrease the ideological point of view and be more pragmatic so that we can really consider the development of our technology. There's no way to have a protection in a research work, a microorganism that is isolated, but due to the research, they came to the conclusion that it's a biostimulant, it's a biofertilizant. It's important that we have this protection for the sake of the country, not only for the creator, but also to the country. Great. You brought very interesting data, but the more technology, the cheaper will be the product. And this, in a certain way, is incredible. And we don't see technologies being incorporated to products. I would like to know, in your opinion, this regulation framework that we have, because the legislator had a mindset that is protectionist to avoid the advance of the what was had a patent, or to the lack of information from the business producers, so that even with this regulation framework that is not perfect, so that they can have the access to these new technologies. And then if they are incentivized to research, I think both of them, In the current scenario, we have a capacitation building training curve. We can think about other examples, thinking about what Liliana mentioned, the ones that leave the big discussions in the 19s and 2000s. We have other scenarios, but obviously the agriculture was revolutionized by the use of technology. And today we see Embrapa developing biotechnology for cultures with less economical expression, considering the big 4 or 5. We see big companies competing in the market of biotechnology. So everything happened because someone went there, opened the door, took the risk, and discussed the legislation, if it was adequate or not. So I think that in this scenario, we should discuss what is possible to be done for sure, and with the universities and so on. But we have some changes that are fundamental we need to discuss. I believe that there is a romantic vision about that. It's not only to think about, or to have the patents to the output. It seems that people don't have this visualization or the time of the shelf. And when we have a bioinsecticide, you have different components that will be added to that formulation to ensure stability. And even with the traps, sometimes you have the insects in the agri-business. There are some fabric of insects. We had a research with our associated fabric. It was like any other, with a quality control, the visits, the audits, and so on. So we need also to ensure that everyone can understand what we are talking about. This is an industry with a lot of investment. So I think that this has to do with the answer and what Liliana was talking about, price. So the chemical defender is one of the more expensive. If he uses 1 liter less, this will impact the final price. So to ensure more use and integration of this can change the price. We need the incentives. We need the discussions. We need several discussions, and we should keep this in mind. That's it. I think that we should think also about our legislation that is from 1996. So the word, unknown word for the legislator and also the people that work in this construction. But what is scaring me is that we have still have people with the same thinking, old-fashioned thinking. Is the country ready for this change in the legislation? So let's prepare it. Let's do everything together. You cannot do one step and then the other one and the other one. We need to do all the stages together. We are not prepared. So let's prepare the country, but we should have changes to be stuck here without this protection. There's no way to incentive new researches that will achieve an innovative product in the market. So I think the associations, the players, all of them, we need to work to, obviously, ABPI is trying this for a long time in the search of green technology in a sustainable environment for the country, indicating the ways that should be seen. But if we continue with the thinking that is so restrictive, we will not be able to move forward. I don't know if I have these numbers, but can you give an example to our audience? What is the average time to develop a new biological? What is the average volume of investment, if it's possible to comment also what is the success rate of this development? The numbers, the precise numbers I don't have. I think biological, the difficulty to bring this response is that we have some products in some stages to develop companies that is very different among itself. So just to have an idea, we have the first collective with the data, the press release with the data of the market. And we need to do this in an organized way. We have been discussing the challenges. There are some quality challenges of the products so that the products can have a time in the shelf as the chemicals. So different biological challenges and biostimulants that are not in the standards, they are now being reflected in the standards. There are a lot of difficulties in this sense. From the regulation point of view, we have, despite having biological in more rigid regulation in this area up to a certain point, there is a look of the regulator
Alô, alô, alô.
Hello, can you hear me? So there is a look so that we can have an ensure a regulation specific so that we will not depend on other factors. So we need to have a specific law for biologicals. From the point of view of development, I see that there is, and I think this is interesting to understand the profile and the innovation, that this is what we are talking about, that the cost of technology. I think this is a good challenge for the sector that is beginning. We have some initiatives of discussion, but we have the challenge to homework, to figure out the cost of this so that we can come to the solution. I think that's it. In general, that's it. I would like to recall that the questions are open through the chat. We have a question over there.
Alô?
Hello.
Maravilha. Bom, Eduardo Alac.
Great. Eduardo Alac. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for this initiative, the idea of this panel, because I think this is missing in our discussion today. To present the relevance of critical API for this sector, because any discussion today in Brazil regarding API can be captured by the discussion in the pharmaco industry, but from the biological and chemical point of view, this is important to be considered. And just we only need to take a look. In Brazil, we have 1% of the world market. When we take a look to agro, the numbers are even greater. A lot of multinational companies consider Brazil as number one, its main country of interest. So this is an initiative that should be replied. That's why congratulations in this sense, considering, and once more, having a parallel with pharma. Many times we have pharma global solutions that will come to Brazil, and we see that this is different. Arthur brought the information of the tropical country, the typical activities from our agriculture. We don't have winter as a natural agriculture defender, so a lot of things are done in Brazil to Brazil. So someone asked, as Roberto, perhaps Arthur doesn't have the data, but what do we have today being generated in research and deposit with what tools and technologies in Brazil through the national or by the multinational companies that we have the search today? Well, instead of focusing on big data, a lot of big numbers, is what this happens, of course. So even thinking about a solution in Germany, this doesn't mean that the solution is thought in Germany, but the problem is in Brazil. And then I think that we can talk about fungicide, fungus, are an issue in Brazil. Corn. Today we have an issue with that. We call in Brazil cigarrinha of the coin. In agriculture, when you work with security of products, there is a partnership with Embrapa, some solutions for that. This is a Brazilian issue from the tropical culture. So we are talking about free harvest, so you start creating the risk of green dots. There is no time to have that plague or the area to breed. So it will continue always in this phenomenon of resistance. But here we are in an industry, in an open outdoor industry. So many times we have the use of multinational companies to have a regulation question with the headquarters. Headquarters says, no, go to Brazil. I don't have this answer. So this happens a lot. Obviously, I don't have the numbers, but this has to do with the reality of each company, but this is a fact. Brazil is today a destination of research. Brazil is a leader for the region. So a lot is being developed in Brazil and is exported to the countries of the Latin region. So Brazil is today the main illustration of our tropical culture. Although we have the numbers when we talk about multinational, Brazil is in the center of this innovation in the sector. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay. So first of all, I would like to participate with you. My happiness that I see in a panel like this, people defending this patent system as the booster of innovation. Perhaps I am from the old-fashioned group, but at least before this was not so like this. We were studying more. We had some questions about this power of the patent to stimulate innovation than what I saw now. We had some deep discussions that was this point. Should we increase this possibility or not. So we had a result without conclusion. Perhaps it's my, I don't know this. We may have a bill of, with some proposals of BPI to understand this in the parties. I will ask the support from the people here. We discussed some amendments in some projects, but I think this specific point, no. Júlio, can you hear me? This week, I met Sheila Pires, the director of CTPA, to restart this discussion about where should we protect, up to where we should go in this technology field. So this is in the agenda again. So some between us. Okay. So it will circulate in a controlled way, right?
Igual as gravações do Jeep.
Like the recordings of Jeep, they are on a website. But no one knows. Ana Carolina, lawyer, enthusiast. I would like, in fact, to get Julio's provocation in this panel. It's very focused on the patent. There is a topic that since GP, and now it was published in Valor Econômico, and this is gaining an attraction. The topic is gaining an attraction that is very positive. I have 2 points from Julio to listen, but it seems that we are getting to a level that we need to have a big package of the IP legislation in Brazil. There is a lot of room for changes, and I think this was a great result from GIP. There is a need to discuss deeper with other stakeholders the legislative changes. So this is a point that I would like to listen from you. And the other point that it's important to remember that has to do with other areas, other protection, that I think that we also need to have a more horizontal way, the rights of PI that exist, other rights of IP. How do you see this? The 360. Do you have a lot of industrial secret that is being considered? A map in this context.
Bom que você falou de cultivar.
Yes, it's good that you mentioned the harvest, because I think this is another discussion that exists, that you intend to have the harvest, you cannot protect the patents. These are 2 different rights, and this discussion is very important. You need to have the protection of what is in the harvest, but you have technologies and solutions, technological solutions that should be protected as a patent. But I think that in some moments, we are not considering this point of protection that is involving the biological, and we should, I don't know if romantism or nationalism, and the discussion ends to another place. I think that this forum and other forums should be worked so that we can have a more pragmatic discussion, but from the point of view of the industry, and then I leave this for Arthur to provide this answer. I think that to cultivate, there is a point regarding the effective right. There is a legislative development adoption of what we have today. There is no use to have a right if we cannot put it into practice. We discuss a lot the piracy. This is a very serious issue, and for us, it's very clear, but we have a discussion on that, and I think it's missing the person understanding what we are talking about when we talk about technology of the seed. There is another program of development of when we had, there is from hemoplasma with focus, another way to work and technology that everyone knows and other techniques. But in fact, we have an issue IP regarding illegal seeds, and it's natural when you have the structuring the market prices, and then they open to the informality. So I think that we had an increase on illegal seeds in some regions in Brazil, and we have a program to combat this illegal market, and this is very important to have a legislation that can recognize the rights, and you can have the attention from the government. Then when you need a class, every time that a judge wants to know about the seed, the development, etc., this supports a lot us to cultivate the rights. So your question is very comprehensive, but I think it's where the companies are attentive to these ways to discuss the rights and to be put into practice. This is a really important way. We are almost 20 minutes delay, and we have a cocktail and a dinner. And this shows that the topic is very exciting. I would like now to end asking applauses to Dr. Arthur Gomes and Dr. Liane Lage. Thank you so much for the participation. And we see shortly.